Today I am going to try to install some rod storage in the boat. I'm not going to do a rod locker, mainly because them daggum lids for rod lockers are super expensive. They are really nice to be able to lock it and have a lid, you know, covering your rods. But man, that's not very feasible to me right now. I mean, my nice boat, my big boat, you know, it's an $18,000 boat and it doesn't have, you know, rod lockers on it. Which, speaking of my big boat, I'm basically going to do the same style on this boat right here. It's just going to be a spot to hold 3 rods kind of in a line. I got some PVC and a hole saw bit. So that front plate of the front deck, I'm going to drill 3 holes in it. And then I'm going to make another plate on the next brace behind it towards the front of the boat. And then the PVC is going to run through those. And of course your rods are going to go in them. And then in the back, I'm going to make something similar to the one that's up front. But I'm going to have to get a little creative on how I finish it. It's probably going to be one of them things I'm just going to do on the fly. Let's get to work. I need to cut out a rectangle over here for my switch panel. I got a different switch panel for this boat than I used on my last boat. It looks a little cheaper, I guess. It's not as busy looking, and I kind of wanted that for this boat. And I also need to cut out, of course, my 3 holes for my rod holders. And then right over here somewhere, I think I'm going to go ahead and drill a hole out for the I got the same charger extension little adapter plug right here. So I guess I could go ahead and cut out the holes, or at least the switch panel hole and the adapter hole, and then figure out where I need to put these holes, and then go ahead and get this thing mounted up. This is the adapter I'm talking about. So this end will plug into your 2-bank charger, and then that way you can mount this somewhere flush, and then you can just plug your extension cord right into this. That way it's just a little bit cleaner look. You don't have to open up a hatch and have everything exposed to the weather when you're trying to charge your battery. I want to put this right here. I think the holes for my rods are going to be right here, kind of like going at an angle with this brace. So I think if I put it right up here, it'll get me out of the way of this brace, this dog leg right here that's running down. And I think that'll look good because it'll be like hole, 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 and then this thing. So try to keep all this stuff over here. You know, might look a little busy, but it looks stupid if it was way over here, I think. So I got a 2-inch hole saw bit. So hopefully that'll work. And this is the same size for that PVC too. So in case you're wondering, 2-inch hole saw. I think it's kind of hard to tell because you got this little bottom piece, but it'll definitely work for the mounting holes. If it's the hole's a little bit too small, I'll be able to grind it a little bit to make this work. All right, let's go ahead and try to mark where it's going to go. That should work. I hope. Alright, let's drill this out. Ow. Don't really recommend drilling out or cutting aluminum while wearing Crocs, because this crap is all over the top of my feet. Ow. Let's see if this is going to work. Oh yeah, that's perfect. That is perfect. Alright, so on second thought, I think I'm going to go ahead and paint this. But first, I'm going to go ahead and mount these, or at least, you know, drill the holes for the screws. That way I don't risk scratching it up after it's painted. So let's go ahead and do that, and then we'll paint it, and then we will install this, and then we'll drill the holes for the rod holders. The reason I'm not drilling the holes for the rod holders right now is because I'm not exactly sure how much this might change a little bit once it's secured, once I have this thing pop riveted in. So, all right, let's go ahead and get these things mounted and get it painted up. Almost looks like I halfway know what I'm doing. If you're wondering why those screws are silver, it's because the black ones that came with that little switch panel are absolute junk. Broke 2 of them trying to install that thing. Those right there wasn't too bad though. Alright, so now I need to try to figure out, I was gonna pop rivet this thing in, but I wonder if that wouldn't be better for me to go ahead and just throw some screws in it. That way, since the deck is definitely going to be pop riveted down, if I ever need to access this, I think it'd be better off to put some screws in it instead of pop rivets. That way you can just, since this isn't going to have any hydro turf on it or anything, it'll just be easier, you know, to pop, you know, 7 or 8 screws out than, you know, having to drill out 7 or 8 pop rivets. So I think I'm going to do that. But like I said, now I'm going to go ahead and take these back off and put a coat of paint on this. Okay, so what I did to try to figure out where to put these holes is I took the template that I used to cut out this front piece, and I cut this end off of it, and basically I just laid it up there and I got a piece of PVC and just kind of eyeballed it where that top one needed to go, and then I marked it out, and then I did the same thing with the bottom one. I did this one first, and looking at it, I thought it was just way too low, so I redid it, and then I kind of drew me a straight line on the outside edges of both circles. And then I come up with where the center one needs to be, so they're all equal distance apart. Then I took the 2-inch hole saw on just the drill bit and twisted it through there right where it needs to go, to where it put a hole in the back, in the center of each hole. So in theory, all I gotta do is take this and lay it on this front piece of aluminum, mark my 3 holes, and then drill them out. And that should be pretty close. And for this right here, the second section, I should be able to do something relatively the same. I'm just gonna take some scrap aluminum and probably just rivet it in here, and then maybe run a piece on the bottom and rivet it in just so it's secure. And then I'll use this template on it to do 3 more holes. And then I'm gonna cut my PVC to where they rest on this front panel, or at least butt up to it. And for the back piece, I'm gonna use this same template, but it's gonna be a little different. I'm gonna have to figure something out on it. Like I said, I'm kind of doing this on the fly, so we'll figure it out when we get there, hopefully. Would have been very smart to figure this out before I painted it. So learn from my mistakes. I screwed this up. So I'm probably gonna have to like sand this and repaint it all. Okay, so I cut me a piece of scrap metal and I figured out the angles. Actually, I used an angle finder. I haven't really went over this angle finder. I know I've said it in several videos, but this is an angle finder. Use it a lot when you do like trim carpentry. I guess maybe framers use it too. But anyways, what you do is you just kind of loosen up one side. It's got like a little nut on it. That way you can kind of move it. And what you do is you put the black part on whatever's flat, and then you move the metal part down to whatever the angle is, and then you tighten it up. And that kind of gives you your angle. So then you just lay your flat part on whatever it is you're trying to cut, and then put your mark on there and then cut it out. And it's not always precise, but anyways, that's an angle finder. So that's what I did. I used that and I got my angles on the bottom, and then I laid it up here and then just marked the top. So after I did that, I put my little template on there and then drilled my holes out, and it should line up pretty good. If not, you know, PVC's got a little bend to it, so as long as it's not drastically off, this right here should work. And I think I can go ahead and mount this one, and that's what I'm fixing to do. Alright, now I'm going to cut me a little piece of angle just to put on the back of it, and then rivet it to the bottom and to the plate. Okay, so what I'm going to do is the same thing I did with the floor. I'm going to go in with these little stainless steel screws, and I'm going to drill out a hole first with a 7/64 drill bit, and then I'm going to use this countersink bit on it, then put the screws down, and hopefully it doesn't look like hammered dog doo-doo. So let's do it. Alright, so that was actually a lot of work. So now what I got left to do is I can put my accessory things in there, of course, my adapter plug and my switches, and then I can go ahead and put in my rod holding tubes, and hopefully it'll all fit. I'll have to cut them to size and then flare out the ends so they will stay in there, and I really got to figure out some way to keep them in there for good. Maybe just some epoxy around that middle one and the front part on the back side so you can't see it. And then once I get all that stuff in, I got to figure out what to do on the back part. I kind of want to build a box. If you remember on my first boat build, I had that wooden box that had my switch panel in it. Something like that with 3 holes in it for the butt of the rods to go into. That will have to wait until tomorrow because it is like 12:30 and it is bedtime. Alright, this morning I'm going to try to get my tubes cut for my rod holders. I'm using 1.5 inch PVC, and I guess basically what I'm going to do is just slide them in here. But it needs to be a little bit longer than flush because I'm going to flare these out a little bit, make them look a little better. I guess what I can go ahead and do is just cut it maybe 2 inches long, and then go ahead and flare the factory end, and then put it in there and just kind of eyeball how much it needs to be cut. So I want it to be pretty tight in there as far as resting on that back thing, maybe to keep everything in place. So let's go ahead and do that. This one's all the way in there, and I'm just going to cut it, like I said, maybe 2 inches long. Alright, so I got the tubes cut down, and this is the factory edge, so it's a little smoother, and this is the one I'm going to flare out. So the way that I'm going to flare them out is using the heat gun, heating up just the very end of it, and then you take a bottle and push down in there and put a little bit of force, and it'll slowly, that plastic will get hot and start to melt a little bit, and it'll flange out. I'm gonna hold it right there until it cools down a little bit. And it should be good. Alright, there we go. Alright, so it kind of gives it a little edge. I'm gonna take a sander and sand that down and make sure it's real good and smooth. And then I'm gonna go ahead and paint these flat black. Probably 2 or 3 coats to try to make it a little bit more durable. I got them painted and put in. Now, to get a little bend with this boat and to make the fronts a little more flush, I had to heat up the middle and the bottom one enough to give them a little bit of bend, and then had to hold it there until it cooled down. The top one was okay, but the bottom 2 needed a little bit of a bend to them, but that's gonna be all right. So that is basically that. I'm not exactly sure how to secure this. I'm gonna have to go to Lowe's and see what they got. I was wondering if maybe I could get some kind of black silicone and run around the fronts, and maybe, you know, put some in the back, or if I can find some black epoxy. I don't know if they make black epoxy, but maybe like a JB Weld or something, and put on these, at least on this middle one, and then on the back side of this one where you can't see it. Now, as for the back part, what I plan on doing, I actually took this is the template from this front panel, and I cut it down to size. What I want to do is make this in aluminum. I'm not exactly sure how to do that yet. To get that bend, I might be able to do it myself. If not, I'm not exactly sure. I mean, I could run a piece of angle in between both of them and just rivet it down. If it comes to that, I can do that, but I'm gonna see if I can't just get that bend. If it's not a perfect 90, you know, I can live with it. I want to make this like a continuation of this little deck back here, and once I get back here, I'm not going to go very wide, make it kind of like a big L, and then come out to a top. And I kind of thought about maybe having this a little bit taller than the floor or the deck, to give it like a little bit of lip. That way you can like actually put stuff up here and not worry about it just falling off. But I'm not exactly sure yet. I still have to start framing this up to figure out exactly how high this needs to be even be flush. But that's going to have to be for another day, because I can't cut this piece of metal because it's raining outside. So that's going to be to be continued. Alright, so I ended up getting my buddy to bend this for me. Turned out real nice. And I went ahead and marked where it goes and tried my best to get that hydroturf up to get down to the subfloor. And what I'm going to do now is go ahead and cut me some little pieces of angle and go ahead and attach it to the floor and to this piece so I can get it set in place. I got a couple pieces of angle in place, and I went ahead and cut my 3 holes out. I used the same template I used on the front piece to do those, and actually I'm moving a little bit to the left, so I want to make sure that I can clear all these braces. Now I can go ahead and rivet this thing into place. Alright, I got it riveted in. And this thing is super stout too, them rivets. I'm like really surprised. Right, next thing that I can do, which will probably be my last step on this in this video, is to go ahead and put that foam on the front and in the back, and then try to cut some holes out in it and maybe some slits in it. That way the rod butts will go in and be held kind of tight. Alright, I think that's going to be it for this little project. I think it turned out alright for first time I've ever tried to do it before. A real test will be when I go fishing, and hopefully that won't be too far from now. I'll order some pinch trim to go on the top, some edge mold, and of course I can't really finish that whole little box out until I start framing up that back deck and get it all installed and put in. But as far as the rod holders, they're done now, and I'm glad. That was a lot of work, and I know this was a long video, and if you watched to the end, I really appreciate it, and I hope it could help you on an idea of how to do your rod storage if you're not wanting to throw $1 million into a rod locker, but also want somewhere to put your poles instead of just laying them in your boat. Anyways, I appreciate you guys watching. I'll see you on the next one.